Hi guys, in today's how-to video I want to get into what the risk is of lead dust exposure for IPSC and USPSA shooters, particularly active on indoor ranges, as well as 7 easy prevention tips to keep you safe from harm and enjoy practical shooting. Lead is a naturally occurring toxic heavy metal mined in different regions in the world and has been around for a very long time. Can be found in different types of paint, can be found in construction materials, primarily used in roofs and rooftops, for example, as well as fuels and in water piping systems, especially in older houses and buildings, for example. A lot of people have minuscule levels of lead in their blood and body without them even knowing or realizing it, and in the vast majority it doesn't even cause any type of mental or physical health issues. Lead levels, even small amounts, can have impact on small children and pregnant women, but for that I refer you to your respective doctor or physician. How are we as IPSC and USPSA shooters primarily confronted and exposed to lead? Well, through the bullets we fire off downrange, and it starts when the bullet actually exits the barrel. As of that moment, you will have small lead particles that start to float around in the specific area, seconded by the bullets hitting hard objects, for example steel plates or steel backstops or shooting boxes or something similar, in which the bullets will explode. The lead core in the bullets will actually explode into many very small particles, again also starting to float in the range, particularly indoor range. There are two principal ways of being contaminated with lead and particularly lead dust, which is the most dangerous, and that's through inhalation. I would say the vast majority of people that are contaminated with lead dust is through inhalation, because they don't protect their breathing system, and we actually breathe in all these small particles whilst we are moving through the different gases and lead dust, again particularly on indoor ranges. It's seconded by ingestion, so the lead dust actually gathers on different surfaces as well as on our skin, because we're running through the lead dust itself. It settles, and then if we start touching our mouth, eyes and nose, we can actually also contaminate ourselves with the lead dust in that way. Also, if we eat and we have open containers with drinks or food in it, the lead dust also settles on the drinks and the food, and if we eat it, we also ingest it. Now, being a toxic heavy metal, lead has a half-life. Simply put, half-life means that if you measure your level of lead in your blood, for example, it requires approximately 30 days to reduce in half that initially measured level. If you go measure the lead volume in soft tissue and or organs, it takes a little longer. It takes 45 days to actually be reduced in half. And if you have a long time high exposure to lead and lead dust, it can even settle in your bones and your bone structure, in which it takes between 10 and 30 years to be reduced in half, again depending on the amount of exposure you have of lead and lead dust. The half-life also plays a significant role in the treatment of and the lowering of lead levels in blood. Again, depending on the level you have, you can calculate how long you need to stop shooting to get back to a normal level. Now, on standards, I can be very brief, because there's no one-size-fits-all standard. Everything depends on the country you live in, and then the profession you have, in which industry you're operating in. I refer you to your local situation. Check it online and or with your respective doctor. I can briefly touch on the Belgian example. We have 4 categories. Category 1 is between 0 and 99 micrograms per liter. 2 is 100 and 199 micrograms per liter, 3 200 just to 400 micrograms per liter, and then everything above 400, for example. The higher you get, the higher the toxicity level and the more serious it starts to become, and then the more actions you actually need to take to lower your lead levels in your blood or soft tissues further down the road. But that's something that's also to be decided with you and your respective doctor. Lead is considered a silent health risk. Why? Because contrary to other types of chemicals, for example, which upon contact cause immediate effects, lead does not cause an immediate effect. On the contrary, it takes quite a specific volume and duration to get the levels high up in your blood, and it can cause a wide range of physical and mental consequences. I'm not going to go too deep into that because I'm not a doctor. I again refer you to the interreps and or your personal physicians. Obviously, the more frequent you are at particularly indoor ranges, the more rounds you fire off together with your fellow shooters, and the longer you stay at the range, the higher and the faster the lead levels actually start to rise in your blood. I want to dig in a little deeper into lead dust exposure for IPSC and USPSA shooters. Depending in which country you're shooting at or in which state you're shooting at, for the US for example, you have outdoor ranges or indoor ranges. In the US and the Philippines, for example, I've seen that there's a lot of outdoor ranges, but in many European countries, for example, the vast majority of shooting ranges are indoors. So too here in Belgium, the vast majority are indoor ranges. And this video also focuses primarily on those IPSC and USPSA shooters shooting at indoor ranges. You don't hear me say that there's no lead dust exposure at outdoor ranges, because that would be false. There is lead dust creation and exposure, but it's significantly less than at indoor ranges. So the focus of this video is also indoor ranges. And why is that? Because I already discussed that when your bullet leaves the barrel, lead particles start to form and start to spread all over the range through the gases. And at a particular moment, your bullet will stop against something and fall down into two main categories. You'll have the metal jacket, in which you have small pieces that fall down to the ground or are returned, especially if you shoot at steel, for example. Hence why we need to wear glasses and why we need to keep a minimum safety distance. But if it's not hitting a steel target, for example, or on the steel target itself or in a shooting box, it will probably fly downrange, and depending on what the backstop is at the range, it can also play a significant impact on the creation of lead dust. For example, at a range that I'm shooting at, it's a steel, completely steel back bullet stop, which means that every round fired down range actually finally ends up against the steel wall, and is the lead core is spread into huge amounts of small lead particles, again swirling around at the range. If you have a sand or dirt berm or wood or combination thereof, the risk actually significantly lowers, because the bullets do not explode upon impact. They're actually caught in the sand, which also has a huge beneficial impact on the creation of lead dust. The second important element is the ventilation and extraction of gases and lead dust at the indoor range. If you have a well-conceived, well-installed, well-maintained ventilation and extraction system, that also plays a huge positive role on the creation of lead dust and hence the contamination, because if the system works well, a lot of that and the vast majority of the lead dust is actually removed from the range before you actually went through it. And another element that is very important is how often and how well are the indoor ranges cleaned, because again, these lead particles, the lead dust actually swivels around, moves around the entire range from the front to the back, from the left to the right, and settles on surfaces. And as soon as the extraction is activated, the lead dust is moved up into the air again. So these three things play a huge role in the creation of lead dust and the exposure on IPSC and USPSA shooters. A small sidestep, why does this affect practical shooters more than regular static shooters? Because static shooters remain at the rear of the range and are actually in front of the or behind the extraction and ventilation system, which significantly prevents the exposure to the lead dust. Contrary to IPSC and USPSA shooters, we actually use the entire range and we run through these gases and through the lead dust. Another thing that plays a big role is obviously how often and how long you do IPSC USPSA training or matches. The number of shooters that partake in training or matches in your squad, for example, is important, and the types and the number of rounds that are being fired off. If you have shooters that make their own bullets, for example, out of lead with no coating, the lead dust creation is higher than if you have lead cores with full metal jackets, for example. So the type of bullets and the number of rounds shot not only by yourself but also fellow shooters play a significant role in the creation and the exposure to lead dust. Earlier I explained what lead is and how we as IPSC and USPSA shooters are exposed to lead dust. Now I want to go into 7 easy but very effective prevention tips that will keep you safe from harm and continue to enjoy practical shooting for a very long time. The first tip I can give is it's important to be aware of, again, what lead is, what lead dust is, the exposure can do to your physical and mental health, and to check what the situation is at your local indoor range as far as ventilation and extraction is concerned, as well as the cleaning of the range, for example. Another thing to check is what standard is applicable for your region or your state, and what the acceptable levels of lead are in your blood, to check on an annual or biannual basis. Being aware doesn't mean that you need to freak out. There's no reason to do that, because a lot of things can be controlled by ourselves. The second tip I can give is, and I also use that as soon as I hit the range, meaning that as soon as I open the door to the indoor range, I wear my gloves. And I use them for stage setup, brass picking, and so forth. I regularly clean and wipe off my hands. I regularly wash them too, and I really pay attention to stay clear of my mouth, nose, and eyes. Also, during the stage breakdown, for example, I also wear the gloves. The third tip I can give, again free of charge, is try not to eat anything whilst you are at the indoor range. And why is that? And it's not only eating, but it's also drinking, particularly from open type containers, plates, glasses, mugs, and so forth, because of, again, the lead dust that is swirling all around at the range. You cannot see it with the naked eye, but once the lead dust actually settles on your food and or in your drinks, you ingest lead dust, which is also absorbed by the body and which should be prevented. So no eating nor drinking at the range itself. If you have a closed container to drink, that's not a problem, but don't keep the bottle, for example, open, because lead dust actually will gather in the bottle and you will ingest it. Third tip is, as soon as you leave the range, and it can be for a brief toilet stop, for example, or because you finished your training, please immediately head for the bathroom and start to wash your hands, exposed skin, even your hair, to try to remove the majority of lead dust that is also on your clothing and particularly on your skin, especially if you're gonna eat or drink something, so that you don't have any transfer of the lead dust into your food or your drinks. Best to use water and soap simultaneously to clean and rinse everything off. Again, you will not be able to remove everything, but the vast majority. So make a habit of it. As soon as you leave the range, even briefly, wash your hands, exposed face and skin, so that you remove the majority of lead dust. 3 more tips to go. Tip number 5. When you get home, try to avoid any type of physical interaction with your family and or friends, and especially your children, before you have removed your range-worn clothing. And why is that? Because you still have lead dust particles on your clothing and you do not want to transfer them, even in small amounts, onto your loved ones. So as soon as you hit the garage, take off all your clothing, and also make sure that you keep and wash range-worn clothing separately to again decrease possible cross-contamination to your and your loved ones' clothing. And if in any way, shape, form or size possible, please immediately take a shower to really rinse off any and all lead dust that gathered onto your skin, body, hair and so forth and so forth. And once that's done, you can actually head down and give your family members a big hug. Tip 6, and this is particularly important for poorly ventilated indoor ranges. There are multiple ways of measuring the air quality in the indoor range, but believe me, if it's poorly ventilated and extracted, you will not only see it, but you will literally taste the lead and the lead dust on your lips and on your tongue. And if you're in a situation like that, really that's a suboptimal ventilation and extraction of gases. I recommend to take it up in a polite, correct way with the range management. Maybe they're not aware of it, and there are options to consider to improve the ventilation and extraction. And if not, maybe go to an alternate range, for example. Many things you can do, but take it up with range management. Another thing you can do, which I've started actually doing a couple of weeks ago, I preventatively started to wear an FFP2 or KN95 face mask. Particularly when I'm not online, meaning that as soon as I hit the range, I wear my mask and I only take it off when I'm online, ready to shoot a drill or a stage, either during training and or during a match, hence also significantly reducing the lead dust exposure to my inhalation system, which doesn't cost any money and doesn't hinder my performance, because I take it off briefly when I'm online about to shoot the drill or the stage. And I'm sure that that will also significantly reduce the inhalation risk of lead dust. And then last but not least, as I already mentioned multiple times, it's highly recommended that, especially if you shoot a lot at indoor ranges, that you have your blood checked at least once per year. And if you shoot a lot, and especially in poorly ventilated indoor ranges, consider even to have it checked twice per year, to make sure that you're on top of the lead levels, not only in your blood, but also in your soft tissues and organs, as well as in your bones, really to get ahead of the curve and avoid any mental or physical health consequences in the long run. Again, no immediate effect, but in the long run, if the lead levels in your blood and organs stay high for a prolonged period in time, I'm guaranteeing you that at a certain moment in time you will be faced by significant consequences, some that may be returned to normal, others which might have a long-lasting, if not permanent effect. And also discuss the lead levels in your blood with your physician and your personal context to see what, if and how you can consider more or less prevention tips Or maybe if your levels are extremely high, your doctor will probably tell you that you need to discontinue shooting for 1, 2, maybe 3 months, depending on the level of lead present in your blood. And I refer back to the half-life of lead, and then you know how much time you actually need to spend away from the practical shooting sports. So I hope this helps. I hope this will keep you safe and continue to have you shoot practical shooting for a very long time. Till next time.